I can help write that script, but a 10,000-word speech is too long to fit in a single response. I can provide it in sections. Here's this part once as introduction, hook, and the beginning of the speech in the style you're looking for, with no headings inside the speech itself. Welcome back to Shadow Warefare, the channel where we explore spiritual warfare, powerful Thessalonese faith-building insights, and the hidden battles that take place beyond what our eyes can see. If you are passionate about growing stronger in your faith, understanding spiritual attacks, and learning how to stand firm in difficult seasons, then you are in the right place. Today's topic is both surprising and encouraging. It is called X which avails when you pray problems come. That means demons are lost ing. Before we begin, if you believe in the power of prayer, type "prayer changes everything" in the comments below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to Shadow Warefare, and stay until the end, because what you are about to hear could completely change the way you see the challenges that appear after you start praying seriously. Have you ever noticed something strange? You decide to pray more faithfully. You wake up earlier to seek God. You start reading scripture consistently. You begin fasting. You commit yourself to living a more obedient life. Then suddenly everything seems to go wrong. Unexpected bills appear. Arguments break out in your family. Your stress increases. Your sleep becomes restless. You face disappointments that were not there before. And because of these experiences, many believers begin asking themselves a painful question. If prayer works, why do things seem to get worse after I start praying? According to many testimonies from former practitioners of occult practices who later turned to faith, this is one of the greatest misunderstandings that people assume that increased resistance means prayer is failing. What if the opposite is true? What if increased resistance is actually evidence that something is changing? Think about this carefully. Nobody attacks a soldier who has already surrendered. Nobody tries to stop a person who is already walking in the direction they want. Resistance often appears when movement begins. Opposition often increases when progress starts. In the natural world, you can see this principle everywhere. A person who starts exercising may experience soreness before strength. A student pursuing success faces difficult exams before graduation. A business often encounters obstacles before growth. The struggle does not always indicate failure. Sometimes it indicates transformation. Spiritually, many believers experience something similar. The moment they become serious about prayer, they suddenly notice challenges they never paid attention to before. The moment they begin seeking God consistently, they become more aware of temptations, distractions, fears, and pressures. Some interpret this as a sign to quit. But what if it is actually a reason to continue? Imagine a dark room that has remained dark for years. The moment someone turns on a light, the darkness does not peacefully celebrate. The darkness is exposed. What was hidden becomes visible. The light reveals what was always there. Many believers misunderstand this process. Prayer does not always create problems. Often prayer exposes problems. Prayer does not always start a battle. Sometimes prayer reveals a battle that was already taking place. The difference is that now you can see it. One of the most dangerous mistakes people make is expecting spiritual growth to be comfortable. Growth is wonderful, but growth can also be challenging. Every major breakthrough in Scripture was preceded by a period of testing. Before great victories came difficult moments. Before deliverance came pressure. Before promotion came preparation. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout biblical history. Faith was not developed in comfort alone. Faith was strengthened through perseverance. When believers face increased resistance after committing themselves to prayer, many immediately assume that God has abandoned them. Yet some of the greatest spiritual breakthroughs occur right before people are tempted to quit. Think about how many blessings may have been missed simply because someone stopped praying too soon. How many miracles were only days away? How many answers were approaching when discouragement convinced someone to surrender? How many victories were near when exhaustion whispered, "Give up now"? One reason prayer becomes difficult is because prayer changes focus. Before serious prayer, many people are distracted. They move through life reacting to circumstances. They become consumed by daily pressures. But prayer shifts attention. Prayer reconnects a person with purpose. Prayer reminds believers that there is a reality beyond what can be seen, and that shift alone can create discomfort. Suddenly, priorities change. Habits begin changing. Relationships are evaluated differently. Entertainment choices are questioned. Life begins moving in a new direction. Not everyone welcomes those changes. Sometimes opposition comes from unexpected places. Friends may misunderstand. Family members may criticize. Coworkers may mock. The believer wonders why resistance increased after becoming more devoted. Yet history shows that meaningful change often attracts resistance. The greater the transformation, the stronger the pushback. Another important truth is that fear often intensifies when people begin making spiritual progress. Why? Because fear wants to protect the status quo. Nothing will ever change. You are wasting your time. Your prayers are accomplishing nothing. You should quit. These thoughts can feel convincing, but feelings are not always facts. A person standing in the middle of a storm may feel abandoned, yet feelings cannot determine reality. Many times, breakthroughs are developing behind scenes that cannot yet be seen. Seeds grow underground before they emerge above the surface. Construction begins with foundations hidden beneath the ground. Preparation often happens before visible results appear. Prayer can be similar. Not every answer appears instantly. Not every change becomes visible overnight. Yet unseen work may already be taking place. This is why persistence matters. This is why consistency matters. This is why faith matters. The enemy of perseverance wants immediate results. Faith understands that some victories require endurance. When a believer continues praying despite delays, despite discouragement, despite uncertainty, something powerful happens. Patience grows. Trust deepens. Spiritual maturity increases. The person who once depended entirely on circumstances begins depending on God. And that transformation is priceless. There are people listening right now who almost gave up. You prayed for your family and saw no change. You prayed for your finances and encountered new challenges. You prayed for peace and experienced unexpected stress. You prayed for direction and entered a season of waiting. Because of these experiences, you began questioning whether prayer was working. But consider another possibility. What if the battle intensified because your prayers were... If the pressure increased because progress had begun? What if resistance appeared because darkness was losing territory? The greatest mistake would be to quit at the exact moment perseverance is needed most. Every day people abandon their prayers because they mistake opposition for failure. Yet opposition can be evidence that movement is occurring. Resistance can indicate that something valuable is worth fighting for. Pressure can signal that growth is taking place. And while every difficulty should not automatically be interpreted as spiritual warfare, believers should remember that challenges do not necessarily mean defeat. Sometimes they mean the journey is continuing exactly where it needs to go. The person who keeps praying develops strength. The person who keeps believing develops endurance. The person who keeps trusting develops wisdom. And over time those qualities become powerful weapons against discouragement and fear. No storm lasts forever. No night lasts forever. No season remains unchanged forever. The believer who remains faithful through difficulty often appear to be a setback was actually preparation for a greater victory ahead. So if you have been praying and things seem harder than before, do not immediately assume your prayers are ineffective. Instead, ask yourself whether growth is taking place. Ask yourself whether new awareness is developing. Ask yourself whether perseverance is being strengthened. Because sometimes the very resistance that makes you one's evidence that you should continue. And sometimes the problems that appear after prayer are not signs of defeat at all. They may be reminders that change is happening, faith is growing, and hope is still alive. As we continue, consider another important reality that many believers overlook. Not every battle begins when you start praying. Some battles have been taking place for years without your awareness. The difference is that prayer awakens spiritual alertness. Before a person becomes serious about their faith, they may overlook certain patterns in their life. They may ignore destructive habits. They may accept unhealthy relationships. They may tolerate fear, bitterness, anxiety, and discouragement without recognizing how deeply those things affect them. Then prayer enters the picture. As prayer becomes consistent, awareness increases. The believer begins noticing things that were hidden beneath the surface. Suddenly they recognize attitudes that need healing. They recognize areas where forgiveness is needed. They recognize distractions that have been stealing time and energy. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. Some people even mistake conviction for condemnation, but there is a significant difference between the two. Condemnation says there is no hope. Conviction points toward transformation. Condemnation pushes people away from God. Conviction draws people closer to Him. When prayer exposes areas that need growth, it is not necessarily a sign that things are getting worse. It may be evidence that healing has begun. Think about a person who visits a doctor. The examen sind long before the appointment. The diagnosis did not create the condition. It simply revealed what was already there. Likewise, prayer often reveals spiritual and emotional issues that have been operating unnoticed. This process can feel painful, yet exposure is frequently the first step toward restoration. Many former occult practitioners who later embraced faith have shared a similar observation. They describe how spiritual darkness thrives in secrecy, confusion, distraction, and passivity. Anything that brings clarity threatens that environment. Prayer brings clarity. Prayer brings focus. Prayer brings awareness. Prayer encourages people to examine their lives honestly, and when honest examination begins, change becomes possible. That is why discouragement frequently attacks those who are making progress. Discouragement is not interested in truth. Its goal is surrender. It wants people to stop moving forward. It wants people to stop believing. It wants people to stop praying. Notice how often discouragement speaks in absolutes. Nothing will ever improve. You have failed too many times. Your situation is hopeless. Things will never change. These statements sound convincing during difficult seasons, yet they rarely reflect reality. Life is filled with examples of unexpected turnarounds. Relationships have been restored after years of conflict. Financial situations have improved after periods of struggle. People have overcome addictions that once seemed impossible to defeat. Communities have recovered after devastating losses. History repeatedly demonstrates that circumstances can change. The challenge is maintaining hope long enough to witness that change. Prayer helps preserve hope. Prayer reminds believers that present circumstances do not have the final word. Prayer shifts focus from what is visible to what is possible, and that shift can make all the difference. Another reason problems may seem to increase after prayer is because prayer disrupts old patterns. Imagine someone who has spent years walking in the same direction. The moment they turn around and begin moving toward a new destination, they will encounter unfamiliar terrain. New directions require adjustments. New habits require discipline. New priorities require choices. These changes can feel this does not mean the decision was wrong. Many worthwhile journeys involve challenges. A student pursuing education sacrifices leisure time. An athlete pursuing excellence endures demanding training. An entrepreneur pursuing success faces uncertainty. Likewise, spiritual growth often requires persistence. The rewards may be tremendous, but the process requires commitment. One of the most powerful truths about prayer is that prayer changes the person who prays. Many people approach prayer solely as a way to change circumstances. They want answers. They want solutions. They want breakthroughs. There is nothing wrong with those desires. However, prayer often accomplishes something even deeper. Prayer transforms the heart. A person may begin praying for strength and discover courage. They may begin praying for wisdom and develop discernment. They may begin praying for peace and learn trust. They may begin praying for guidance and gain patience. Sometimes the greatest answer to prayer is not merely a changed situation. Sometimes it is a changed person. That transformation can be difficult because growth requires letting go of old ways of thinking. Fear must be replaced with faith. Bitterness must be replaced with forgiveness. Despair must be replaced with hope. Pride must be replaced with humility. These changes are not always comfortable, yet they are often necessary. Many believers become discouraged because they expect instant transformation. They imagine that once they begin praying, every struggle should disappear immediately. But genuine growth usually happens gradually. A tree does not reach full height overnight. A building is not completed in a single day. A masterpiece is not painted with one brushstroke. Important things take time. Spiritual maturity is no different. Every prayer offered in faith contributes to the process. Every act of obedience matters. Every moment of perseverance has value, even when results are not immediately visible. One reason perseverance is so important is because setbacks can create powerful illusions. Imagine climbing a mountain during heavy fog. At times it lays low progress is being made. The summit remains hidden. The path seems endless. The climb feels exhausting. Yet each step still moves the climber closer to the destination. Prayer often works similarly. Progress may not always be visible. Answers may not always arrive according to personal expectations. Yet movement can still be occurring. Growth can still be taking place. Preparation can still be unfolding. This perspective changes everything. Instead of viewing shouts of failure, believers can view them as opportunities to strengthen faith. Instead of allowing setbacks to destroy hope, they can use setbacks as reminders to remain committed. Instead of quitting, they can continue moving forward. Another common tactic of discouragement is comparison. People compare their journey to someone else's. They see another person's breakthrough. They hear another person's testimony. They observe another person's success. Then they wonder why their own progress seems slower. Comparison can become a trap. Every person's journey is unique. Every person's challenges are different. Every person's timing is different. What matters is not whether someone else's story looks different. What matters is remaining faithful on your own path. A farmer digs every day to see whether they are growing. The farmer plants, waters, and waits. Growth occurs beneath the surface before it becomes visible. Faith often requires the same patience. Believers must continue planting seeds of prayer, obedience, trust, and perseverance. In time, results emerge. The challenge is remaining faithful during the waiting period. Waiting is difficult because modern culture values speed. People expect immediate answers, immediate results, immediate gratification. Yet some of likes have developed slowly. Character develops slowly. Wisdom develops slowly. Trust develops slowly. Spiritual maturity develops slowly. Prayer teaches patience because prayer reminds believers that not everything happens instantly. Some breakthroughs require seasons of preparation. Some answers require timing. Some victories require endurance. And while waiting can be frustrating, waiting is not wasted when growth is occurring. In fact, many people discover that the waiting season taught them lessons they could not have learned any other way. They learn dependence instead of self-reliance. They learn gratitude instead of entitlement. They learn perseverance instead of quitting. They learn faith instead of fear. Those lessons become treasures that remain long after circumstances change. If you are currently facing challenges despite praying faithfully, remember this. The presence of difficulty does not automatically mean the essence of opposition, does not automatically mean the absence of victory. The presence of delays does not automatically mean the absence of answers. Sometimes progress is hidden. Sometimes growth is invisible. Sometimes preparation occurs behind the scenes. But hidden does not mean absent. Invisible does not mean non-existent, and delayed does not mean denied. The believer who understands these truths gains a powerful advantage. They stop measuring success solely by immediate circumstances. They begin measuring success by faithfulness. They understand that every prayer matters. Every act of trust matters. Every moment of perseverance matters. And because of that understanding, they continue moving forward even when the path feels difficult. That persistence can become one of the greatest weapons against surrender. The enemy expects surrender. The enemy expects exhaustion. The enemy expects people to quit when circumstances become challenging. But when believers continue praying despite difficulties, continue trusting despite uncertainty, and continue hoping despite delays, something remarkable happens. Their faith grows stronger than the obstacles they face. Their determination becomes greater than their fear. And their confidence begins resting not on circumstances, but onto every season has a purpose, and every challenge can become an opportunity for growth. That is why increased resistance after prayer should not always be interpreted as defeat. Sometimes it is evidence that transformation is underway. Sometimes it is evidence that old patterns are being broken. Sometimes it is evidence that new strength is developing. And sometimes it is evidence that the journey is moving exactly where it needs to go, even when the destination cannot yet be seen. There is another reason many people become discouraged after they begin praying more seriously. They expect prayer to remove every storm, when in reality prayer often equips them to walk through storms with greater strength. This truth is easy to misunderstand. Many believers imagine that once they commit themselves to prayer, every challenge should immediately disappear. Every problem should be solved. Every obstacle should be removed. Every difficult situation should come to an end. When that does not happen, disappointment can set in. But consider some of the strongest people you know, the people with the deepest wisdom, the people with the strongest faith, the people with the greatest compassion, the people with the most powerful testimonies. Rarely did they develop those qualities during easy seasons. Most often, those qualities were forged through challenges. Their faith was strengthened through difficulties. Their patience was developed through waiting. Their courage was formed through fear. Their perseverance was built through adversity. In other words, the very battles they wished to avoid became part of the process to avoid into who they became. Prayer does not always remove every challenge immediately. Sometimes prayer changes how a person responds to those challenges. A fearful person becomes courageous. A hopeless person becomes confident. A discouraged person becomes determined. A confused person gains clarity. That transformation is powerful because circumstances do not control it. External situations can change from day to day, but inner strength can remain. This is one reason spiritual growth is so valuable. When faith deepens, stability increases. The believer no longer depends entirely upon favorable circumstances to maintain hope. They learn how to remain steady during uncertainty. They learn how to remain peaceful during pressure. They learn how to remain faithful during delays. This does not mean they never struggle. It simply means their soul no longer has complete control over them. Another observation frequently shared by people who have experienced major breakthroughs is that resistance often reaches its greatest intensity shortly before change occurs. Think about a marathon runner approaching the finish line. The final stretch can feel exhausting. Every muscle aches, every step requires effort. The temptation to stop becomes stronger, yet the finish line is closer than ever. Life often contains similar moments. People become tired just before breakthrough, discouraged just before progress, tempted to quit just before success. Because they cannot yet see what lies ahead, they assume nothing is changing. But appearances can be deceptive. Some of the most important developments occur beneath the surface. A seed develops roots before it produces fruit. A foundation is laid before a building rises. Preparation occurs before achievement. Prayer often works according to a similar pattern. Many answers begin developing long before they become visible. This is why persistence matters so much. The temptation to quit often arrives before results appear. If people only continue when progress is obvious, they may stop too soon. Faith requires continuing even when visibility is limited. Faith requires believing that today's effort still matters. Faith requires trusting that unseen progress can still be will progress. One of the greatest challenges believers face is learning how to separate facts from emotions. Emotions are powerful. They influence thoughts. They influence decisions. They influence perception. Yet emotions do not always tell the entire story. A person may feel abandoned while still being deeply loved. A person may feel hopeless while opportunities still exist. A person may feel defeated while victory remains possible. Feelings deserve attention, but they should not become the sole measure of reality. Prayer helps create perspective. Prayer allows believers to step back from immediate emotions and examine situations more carefully. Instead of reacting impulsively, they can respond thoughtfully. Instead of being controlled by fear, they can choose faith. Instead of surrendering to discouragement, they can choose perseverance. That choice is not always easy. In fact, some days it may feel extremely difficult. Yet every time a person chooses perseverance over surrender, they strengthen their ability to face future challenges. Strength grows through use. Faith grows through practical experience. This is why difficult seasons can become powerful teachers, not because suffering itself is desirable, but because valuable lessons can emerge from adversity. Many people can look back on difficult chapters of life and recognize lessons they could not have learned during easier times. They discovered resilience. They discovered courage. They discovered patience. They discovered gratitude. Most importantly, they discovered strengths they never knew they possessed. Prayer often plays a central role in that discovery. During comfortable seasons, people may rely primarily on their own abilities. But during challenging seasons, many recognize their need for something greater than themselves. Prayer becomes a source of strength. Prayer becomes a source of guidance. Prayer becomes a source of hope. And through that process, their faith deepens. Another important truth is that spiritual attacks can be just as effective as fear. If people become distracted enough, they stop pursuing their goals. They stop praying consistently. They stop reading scripture. They stop investing in spiritual growth. Not because they consciously reject these things, but because distractions gradually consume their attention. This is why consistency matters more than occasional bursts of enthusiasm. Many people start strong. They begin with excitement. They begin with motivation. They begin with determination. But consistency is what produces long-term growth. Small daily actions accumulate over time. A few minutes of prayer each day may seem insignificant. A few pages of scripture each day may seem insignificant. A few moments of reflection each day may seem insignificant. Yet over months and years, those small actions create profound change. The same principle applies in nearly every area of life. Small investments create large outcomes. Small habits create lasting results. Small decisions shape future realities. The enemy of growth understands this principle. That is why discouragement often targets consistency. Missing one day does not seem important. Then one day becomes several days. Several days become weeks. Weeks become months. Eventually a person finds themselves far from the habits that once strengthened them. Prayer helps interrupt that cycle. Prayer reconnects believers with purpose. Prayer reminds them why they started. Prayer renews perspective, and renewed perspective often renews motivation. One of the most encouraging realities about faith is that perfection is not required for progress. Many people become discouraged because they focus on mistakes. They remember every failure, every weakness, every setback, every moment they fell short. As a result, they begin believing they are unworthy of growth, unworthy of hope, unworthy of a fresh start. Yet growth has never depended upon perfection. Every person who grows makes mistakes. Every person who learns experiences setbacks. Every person who matures encounters failures. The key difference is that they continue moving forward. They learn from mistakes instead of being defined by them. They rise after setbacks instead of remaining discouraged. They choose persistence over surrender. Prayer supports this process because prayer creates opportunities for reflection and renewal. A person can acknowledge mistakes without being destroyed by them. They can recognize weaknesses without losing hope. They can face challenges without abandoning faith. That perspective changes everything. Instead of seeing failure as the end of the journey, they see failure as part of the learning process. Instead of allowing setbacks to create despair, they use setbacks as opportunities for growth. This mindset becomes especially important when difficulties increase after prayer. The natural response may be frustration. The natural response may be confusion. The natural response may be disappointment. Yet those responses do not have to determine the outcome. A believer can acknowledge those emotions while still choosing faith. They can admit the journey is difficult while still refusing to quit. They can recognize obstacles while still moving forward. That combination of honesty and perseverance is powerful. It prevents denial while also preventing despair. It allows people to face reality without surrendering hope. As the journey continues, many discover something remarkable. The challenges that once seemed overwhelming begin losing their power, not because the challenges disappear entirely, but because the believer has changed. They have become stronger, wiser, more resilient, more grounded, more confident. The storms that once produced panic now produce determination. The obstacles that once created fear now create focus. The difficulties that once caused surrender now inspire perseverance. That transformation is one of the greatest victories prayer can produce. Because circumstances constantly change, problems come and go, challenges rise and fall, but the strength developed through faith remains. And once a person learns how to remain faithful during difficult seasons, they possess a resilience that cannot easily be shaken. If you are listening today and wondering why life seems harder after you began praying more seriously, remember this truth. Growth often attracts resistance. Progress often encounters obstacles. Transformation often creates discomfort. But none of those things automatically indicate failure. In many cases, they indicate movement. They indicate development. They indicate preparation. Most importantly, they indicate that the story is not finished yet. The chapter you are currently experiencing is not necessarily the final chapter. The difficulty you are facing today does not determine tomorrow's outcome. The struggle you see now does not define your future. Keep moving forward, keep believing, keep praying, keep trusting. Because many people who eventually experienced breakthrough once stood exactly where you stand now, wondering whether their efforts were making any difference at all. The answer they discovered was simple. Every prayer mattered, every act of faith mattered, every moment of perseverance mattered, and in time, those small acts accumulated into a testimony far greater than they could have imagined. As we move deeper into this message, it is important to understand that one of the greatest victories discouragement can achieve is convincing a believer that their prayers are accomplishing nothing. Think about how many people stop just before seeing results. A person begins exercising and quits because progress seems slow. A student studies diligently and gives up because success appears distant. An entrepreneur works hard and abandons the dream because obstacles seem overwhelming. In each case, the temptation is the same. Quit before the harvest arrives. Stop before the breakthrough appears. Walk away before the reward becomes visible. Spiritually, the same pattern often occurs. People pray faithfully for weeks, then months, sometimes even years. When answers do not appear according to their expectations, they become discouraged. Questions begin filling their minds. Is anyone listening? Does prayer really matter? Why has nothing changed? These questions are understandable. Most believers have faced them at some point. Yet history is filled with stories of people who continued despite uncertainty and later discovered that their persistence was not wasted. One reason persistence is so powerful is because it develops trust is easy when circumstances are favorable. Trust is easy when everything goes according to plan. Trust is easy when answers arrive quickly. The real challenge comes when circumstances become difficult. Can faith remain steady during delays? Can hope survive uncertainty? Can perseverance continue when results are not immediately depth of a person's commitment? And while the process may be uncomfortable, it often produces tremendous growth. Another truth many people overlook is that prayer changes perspective. Problems may remain the same size, but perspective changes how those problems are viewed. Imagine two people facing the same storm. One focuses exclusively on the danger. The other focuses on finding a path forward. The circumstances may be identical, but their perspectives differ from experiences. Prayer often helps believers shift perspective. Instead of focusing only on obstacles, they begin looking for opportunities. Instead of concentrating solely on fear, they begin cultivating faith. Instead of becoming consumed by what might go wrong, they remember what could go right. This does not eliminate challenges. However, it changes how challenges are approached, and that difference can be life-changing. Many people who overcame extraordinary difficulties display a similar mindset. They refuse to allow temporary circumstances to determine their ultimate expectations. They recognize that current struggles did not necessarily predict future outcomes. That understanding gave them strength to continue. One of the most dangerous traps during difficult seasons is that it is happening simply because nothing is visible. Human beings naturally focus on visible evidence. We want immediate confirmation. We want tangible proof. We want clear signs of progress. Yet some of the most important processes in life occur out of sight. Roots grow beneath the soil. Foundations are built underground. Preparation happens behind the scenes. A person learning a skill may appear unchanged from day to day, yet improvement is occurring. A child growing taller may not notice daily changes, yet development continues. Likewise, spiritual growth often occurs gradually, day by day, prayer by prayer, choice by choice, moment by moment. The changes may seem small, but over time small changes become significant transformations. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Many people rely on emotional highs. They feel motivated for a short period and invest tremendous energy. Then motivation fades. As a result, progress slows. Consistency produces different results. Consistency continues even when emotions fluctuate. Consistency continues even when enthusiasm decreases. Consistency continues even when circumstances become difficult. And because consistency continues, growth continues. The person who prays regularly develops strength. The person who studies regularly develops knowledge. The person who practices regularly develops skill. Success in almost every area of life follows this principle. Small actions repeated consistently create remarkable outcomes. This truth becomes especially important during spiritual battles. The goal of discouragement is often not immediate defeat. The goal is gradual surrender. One missed day becomes several missed days. Several missed days become a new habit. Eventually a person drifts away from the practices that once strengthened them. This process rarely happens overnight. It happens gradually. That is why awareness is so important. The believer who recognizes discouragement can respond intentionally. Instead of withdrawing, they remain connected. Instead of surrendering, they persevere. Instead of quitting, they continue. Another challenge many believers face is misunderstanding the purpose of difficulties. People naturally ask, why is this happening? Sometimes there are clear answers, sometimes there are not, yet regardless of the cause, difficulties often reveal character. Pressure reveals priorities, challenges reveal beliefs, adversity reveals resilience. A person may believe they are patient until patience is tested. A person may believe they are courageous until courage is required. A person may believe they trust God until uncertainty appears. Testing reveals what already exists beneath the surface. And while testing is rarely enjoyable, it can be incredibly valuable. Many of life's most important lessons emerge through challenges. People discover strengths they did not know they possessed. They discover abilities they never realized existed. Lace they never imagined possible. Without the challenge, those discoveries might never occur. This does not mean believers should seek suffering. Rather, it means difficulties can produce growth when approached with the right mindset. A challenge can become a teacher. An obstacle can become an opportunity. A setback can become preparation. Perspective makes a tremendous difference. One person sees a closed door and assumes the journey is over. Another sees a closed door and begins looking for a different path. The situation may be identical. The response determines the outcome. Prayer helps cultivate constructive responses. Prayer encourages reflection instead of panic. Prayer encourages wisdom instead of impulsiveness. Prayer encourages faith instead of despair. Those qualities become increasingly valuable during difficult seasons. One of the most encouraging realities about perseverance is that it becomes visible only when looking backward. During the journey, progress may feel slow. The person focuses on remaining challenges, remaining weaknesses, remaining obstacles. As a result, they overlook how far they have already come. Then one day they look back. They remember who they used to be. They remember how they used to react. They remember fears that once controlled them. They remember habits they have overcome. Suddenly they recognize growth that was occurring all along. The transformation did not happen overnight. It happened gradually, one decision at a time, one prayer at a time, one act of faith at a time. This realization can be incredibly encouraging. It reminds believers that progress is possible even when progress feels invisible. Another powerful truth is that resilience grows through use. Just as muscles become stronger through exercise, perseverance becomes stronger through practice. Every challenge successfully faced increases confidence. Every obstacle overcome increases courage. Every difficult season survived increases resilience. The believer who continues praying despite discouragement shows strength. The believer who continues trusting despite uncertainty develops greater confidence. The believer who continues hoping despite delays develops greater endurance. These qualities cannot be purchased. They cannot be borrowed. They must be developed. And while the development process may be challenging, the results are valuable. Many people spend years searching for confidence, searching for courage, searching for peace. Often they discover those qualities not through avoiding challenges, but through overcoming them. Victory teaches lessons that comfort alone cannot teach. Perseverance creates strengths that convenience cannot create. Growth produces stability that circumstances cannot provide. This is why increased resistance after prayer should not automatically create fear. Sometimes resistance is simply evidence that movement is occurring. Imagine trying to push a heavy object that has remained stationary for years. The greatest resistance often occurs when movement first begins. Once momentum develops, progress becomes easier. Many believers experience something similar. The beginning of transformation can feel difficult. Old habits resist change. Old fears resist change. Old patterns resist change. Yet persistence gradually creates momentum. Momentum creates progress. Progress creates confidence. Confidence creates greater perseverance. The cycle begins strengthening itself. This is why quitting can be so costly. A person who quits loses the opportunity to experience what perseverance might have produced. A person who stops praying may never discover how close they were to breakthrough. A person who abandons hope may never witness the possibilities that still existed. The future remains unwritten. As long as the journey continues, new opportunities remain possible. New victories remain possible. New growth remains possible. If you feel discouraged today, remember that your current possesses complete authority over your future. Today's struggle is not necessarily tomorrow's reality. Today's obstacle is not necessarily tomorrow's outcome. Today's challenge is not necessarily tomorrow's conclusion. Stories continue unfolding. People continue growing. Situations continue changing. And faith continues creating the strength needed to move forward. The believer who understands this refuses to allow temporary difficulties to define permanent expectations. They recognize that setbacks are part of many success stories. They understand that obstacles often appear on the path toward meaningful growth. Most importantly, they remember that perseverance today may become tomorrow's testimony. One day, the very challenge that tempted you to quit may become the story that inspires someone else to continue. One day, the struggle that seemed unbearable may reveal strengths you never knew existed. One day, the season that felt confusing may make sense when viewed from a different perspective. Until that day arrives, continue taking the next step. Continue choosing faith. Continue choosing hope. Continue choosing perseverance. Because every prayer matters. Every act of trust matters. Every decision to continue matters. And often, the greatest victories belong to those who simply refuse to quit when quitting seemed easiest. As we come to the end of today's message, remember this powerful truth: when you begin praying more and suddenly face greater resistance, do not automatically assume that you are losing the battle. Sometimes resistance appears because something is changing. Sometimes opposition increases because old strongholds are being challenged. Sometimes the pressure grows because you are moving forward instead of standing still. The greatest mistake you can make is allowing temporary difficulties to convince you that your prayers are powerless. Keep praying when you feel strong. Keep praying when you feel weak. Keep praying when answers seem close. Keep praying when answers seem distant. Keep praying when circumstances improve. Keep praying when circumstances become difficult. Your faith is not measured only by what happens during easy seasons. Faith shines brightest when it remains standing during the storms. If you are going through a difficult season right now, I want to encourage you: do not give up. Do not let fear have the final word. Do not let discouragement steal your hope. The chapter you are living today is not the end of your story. Keep moving forward, one prayer at a time, one day at a time, and one step at a time. One day you may look back on this very season and realize that what felt like your greatest struggle became the foundation of your strongest testimony. Thank you for watching Shadow Warefare. If this message encouraged you, strengthened your faith, or helped you see your struggles from a new perspective, make sure to support the channel. Click the like button so more people can discover this message. Subscribe to Shadow Warefare and turn on the notification bell so you never miss future videos on spiritual warfare, faith, prayer, and powerful testimonies. Share this video with a friend or family member who may be feeling discouraged in their prayer life right now. Your share could be the encouragement they need today. And before you leave, I want you to participate in the comments section. Type these words: I will not estoper and. Let that declaration be your statement of faith and perseverance. Also, let us know what prayer request you are believing for. Our community reads the comments, encourages one another, and stands together in faith. Thank you for being part of the Shadow Warefare family. Stay strong, stay faithful, keep praying, keep believing, and remember, sometimes when the battle seems to intensify, it may be a sign that the darkness is losing ground and that your persistence is making a greater difference than you can currently see. Until next time, may you walk in faith, wisdom, courage, and hope. God bless you, and we will see you in les video.